Okay, we will call to order this meeting of the Jefferson Madison Regional Library Policy Committee, Board Policy Committee. And we do have a trustee, I believe, participating remotely today. And that's see Tony Townsend logged in. So I would entertain a motion to approve Tony's remote attendance. And I believe it's due to reason A there.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Martha, you'll make the motion.
Oh, I'll make the motion.
Yeah.
I move that Tony Townsend's request to attend today's meeting of the JMRL board remotely due to reason A, a temporary or permanent disability or medical condition that prevents their physical attendance, be approved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, welcome, Tony.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
First item on our agenda is a continuation of our discussion of policy 1.261, public comment at library board meetings. So at the last meeting, we discussed this. I think we got through, we got a set of bullet points onto the table that were sort of our consensus as a group of what we wanted to see in a policy. And then David and I workshop that into a English language draft that we feel covers all the bullets, plus a few, if there were some gray areas, we went with, we put our own thoughts down. So we have that to look at. Hopefully people did get a chance to see that in advance from the handouts, but we'll share the screen now. And I think today we can probably get this into a form. My goal would be to get this to see if we can recommend this to the full board, into a form that we can recommend to the full board. So we can, I think, just start going through, start reading it, and just, I think as we go, we would wordsmith if there's any thoughts or suggestions on for wordsmithing.
All right, so we'll start at the top, I guess, and we wanted to keep in the current policy states library board wishes to provide an opportunity for the public to comment on regional library business. So just to open that up a little bit more, as we've done with a lot of policies recently, to make it a little bit more inviting. The language is we welcome, we're looking for this. And then it directly references the suggestions, feedback, and complaints policy, the reconsideration policy, and then also the public hearings on specific topics in the public hearings policy. So those are like the three other ways that the board has set direction for the public to receive public.
And we want to give those pointers because, again, we always have to keep in mind our patrons don't know how the governing structure is set up and how do you engage, and they might just think, hey, my best and only way to get this feedback is to show up at the board meeting and speak. That's absolutely a available venue, but we want people to know here's some other options that you have.
Okay. Then there's going to be a public comment period that be held at each regularly scheduled library board meeting. So we get into the meat of it here. Public comment will be scheduled as an agenda item early in each regularly scheduled board meeting, and up to 1 hour will be allowed for the comment period. If at the conclusion of 1 hour there are remaining commenters who wish to speak, public comment will resume after all other agenda items have been completed. So this was a bit of a discussion Mike and I had based on the discussion this group had in October. We have been doing, we've had a high amount of public comment earlier in the year, in the spring, late spring, summer. And I think the most we had was a little bit over an hour, basically. And the agenda for the full board meeting has included a half an hour for public comment since then. It had to bake in some time there. So the question was, what would the scheduled agenda time be? And then how would we keep an orderly meeting going if there were a large? So this is the compromise that I think we had kind of discussed some of the bones of, and then Mike and I stitched together.
And so the big question is, one point here is that it does allow whoever shows up, we're going to hear it all, which is the kind of the current status, although there's some vagueness in the current language about if the number of available slots and so forth. That with this that would be maintained, that if you show up, we're going to hear you. It's just that we're going to not necessarily hear it all up front. We're going to kind of stay late, if you will, to hear it all. And I think that just strikes a balance between being able to organize the meeting effectively and also achieving that goal of hearing all the comment. As David says, I think it's only once every 5 years or less that we actually would actually get into this situation. But it does provide a little clarity for everyone what to expect. There was a thought we talked about, should that be a half hour up front or is 1 hour better? David had some questions about just logistically, what do you schedule into the agenda time slot? My thinking about that is you kind of make your best guesstimate about what might actually happen, which usually is a relatively low number. And if something unexpected happens, then we flex, to accommodate on the day of. But you'll tell me if you feel like there needs to be more structure.
So we're going to keep that half hour slot in for the.
I think we would probably shorten it again. But then, if, to Mike's point, what you just made, like if there were a topic that we knew that people would want to comment on, then we would schedule a longer time for it. But this would allow us to extend that time, even if we only scheduled 15 minutes, it still would allow us to go up to an hour.
But for now, we still have.
It was half an hour for today.
And I think it would clarify the old language, because the old language said available slots, but you
Right.
didn't know what
There was no clarification. of that.
yeah.
And I think the thing we might want to avoid is what happened to city council in the past years, where public comment just went on for hours and hours and hours. And I think this is very good because it delineates it. And then if indeed people still need to speak, we can just continue the meeting at the end after we've done all the pertinent business. So I like it.
I think, Mike, you hit on the main thing here is, do the board members in this committee feel that one of the goals should be we want to hear everybody that shows up? Because
Okay.
certainly that's how I feel.
Mhm.
Martha's in the Senate. I know Mike feels that way. Tony, we want to hear everybody that takes the time, right?
Yep, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Why it's called public comment, so there we go.
Has any issue come up with LEP or ESL folks needing translation or anything like that?
It never had, I'm thinking, I'm racking my brain here. I do not believe we have ever had a request for translation. You mean translation of the meeting or of somebody trying to make a comment?
Trying to make a comment that has a difficulty with language.
No, I don't think we have a mechanism in place for that.
Maybe at some point, I don't know if we need to do that here, but it might be good to have some kind of accommodation for not only foreign language speakers, but ASL.
Yeah.
Again, it probably has a broader reach than just public comments, including programming and stuff. So maybe that's something else.
So this is so if we want to provide that, part of the function of this policy is to tell the public what to expect. It seems to me that would be something we probably don't want to preemptively, put in place for every single meeting when we don't expect, but it would be something that you would request in advance, would be the practical approach to that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if that's the case, maybe we better tell people, here's how you would request that accommodation in advance.
Okay. Is that a new bullet point?
I think it would be.
One page.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Else we could cut.
I think I've seen it somewhere else where they say, if you are going to, kind of do it, let us know in advance if you need.
Oh, yeah, it'd have to be.
accommodations, because
Mhm.
the only place I think the book festival for a while tried to have a sign language interpreter for certain events.
Well, now there's, the Zoom has its own closed captioning in there, but I don't know how reliable it is. We have used it internally. I don't believe we've ever. That's not true. We might have turned it on for some board meetings in the past. It's like recording. We just have to remember to enable that function.
We used it for book group.
Yeah.
It's about 95% effective, I got to say.
I wonder if, David, this could, I'm not sure, you're writing it down. I'm not sure this is the right spot organizationally for it, but I wonder if it fits together with contact the director in advance to schedule. Maybe not.
Well,
Because then
maybe
we're
with-
talking about the order of speakers there.
Commenters may submit with written in advance of the meeting to be read aloud, and then maybe after that would be where you would put the accommodation. part.
Where's that, Krista?
Number 7. It talks about in advance.
Number 6.
No, I think Krista was talking about number 7. Comments.
It's gonna
may
be
submit
well,
written
it's-
statement.
It renumbered when you put in number 2.
Oh, okay, right.
Martha might be.
You're looking at
I'm
the
looking
paper,
at
right?
the, yeah, I'm not.
Yes,
looking
number
at-
6. Okay, I like that. Let's put a place mark there, a placeholder there.
Because that's the other thing you could do is if you can't read it in English or you can't say it because you're deaf, you could send it to the director ahead of time and the director could read it in.
Potentially. All right, Mike, you ready for number 2?
Yes.
Speakers will have a maximum of 5 minutes for their comments. Each individual may speak only once during a meeting. Speakers may not yield time to other individuals.
So here there was some 5 versus 3 in particular discussion last month, and I think preponderance landed on 5.
I mean,
You've
3
kind of-
is the standard amongst our jurisdictional peers, and one way to ensure that everybody gets a chance to speak and doesn't have to stay until after the meeting is to shorten the time, but I understand that.
Well, and in the public comments that we've had after the first large amount of public comments, most of them haven't been able to be limited to 5 minutes anyway. So I'm thinking 5 minutes at most. I think that 3 minutes probably is too short for what some of these folks were trying to say in 5 minutes. So I'm with 5.
Okay, I mean, I think that's where the policy committee landed.
All right.
Mhm.
Either way, this is going to the full board, and I'm sure this will come up. So we just have to put something in as a placeholder, but it sounds like 5 is what we're recommending. Yeah, I'll say it when it comes up, but 3 requires people to have a certain skill to editorial skill, and it's a bar, and I think 5 gives more leeway for people who don't. You shouldn't have to have that skill of making what you want to say concise in order to submit feedback. So,
And because we have the hour at the beginning and then a revisiting at the end, that allows for many people to make a comment and allows for that time. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think 3 would be plenty, but I'm also wary of taking away something that right now we're offering 5 and cutting it to 3 is, somebody's going to view that as being an attempt to curtail. To get there and both across, and I don't want that. We don't want to curtail it.
It doesn't happen.
Okay. Any issues with only once during a meeting? Sorry, Mike, were you?
well, as I say, I think that is, Chris has sort of prompted me to realize that is a difference between what we have, our situation and the jurisdictional partners. I think at those partners, there's regularly comment kind of every time.
Yeah.
And in our situation, it's just occasional. So that also kind of justifies it.
Issue driven.
Yeah, the circumstances are a little bit different as well.
Yeah, and in a lot of public meetings, the addressing the board can only be with the topics that are within the agenda. And I think that this allows for a broader topic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
rather
definitely,
than- I'm sorry, go ahead.
in various examples we looked at, including some of the libraries, some of them did limit sort of the scope in some ways.
Usually they have 2. They have one period where it's just like a free for all, and then one that's you can only talk about the things that are on whatever the agenda,
The
item, the
agenda.
consent agenda. Yeah.
But even some of the library ones said, your comments need to be talk about the business of the library.
Right.
To me, the tricky part of that is how do you, in midstream, adjudicate, oh, you're off topic, so we're going to have to ask you to stop.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting to it, that sounds really tricky to get that right and consistently.
And I
So
don't
we
think
didn't put it in.
we've never had that before, so, and it usually is very focused on, you know, the one or two things that people are interested in. Okay, so 5 minutes, we're in agreement. Each individual may speak only once, in agreement.
Mhm.
I think the reason that comes up in other places is because they do have those two, like here's the discussion about the, you know, whatever the issue is, and then here's the regular one. And then also it leads to people getting into kind of.
Yeah, arguments.
Speakers may not yield time to other individuals. This I've seen both ways in our jurisdictional partners. I think we have some that do yes and some that do no.
I think that with having 5 minutes, that
That's a good
we're
point.
generous with
Yeah.
that. And I mean, yielding time would mean that you'd have 6 minutes,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah, or I've seen it done in city council where someone gets to speak more than once because I'm signed up, but I'm gonna give my time to this person because they didn't get to finish what they were saying or whatever, and that's not what we want.
It could be pre-planned.
Yeah.
So that
It is
something
pre-planned.
goes on for a long time.
I don't want to encourage that sort of gamesmanship because we are going to start talking about next. Some of this, we're putting a little more structure, or at least articulating a little more structure with signups. And that would open up that door for playing a little bit with the signups and so.
Okay, sounds like some consensus there. So number 3, individuals speaking are requested to state their name and jurisdiction of residency. It's a request. You know, I think it's a reasonable thing to ask, but we're not gonna check ID. We're not gonna tell somebody they can't speak if they're not in the jurisdiction. In our 5 jurisdictions. In fact, during the summer, we had a lot of speakers that were from outside of our area, you know, coming from Richmond and Lynchburg, but,
So informative.
yeah.
Well, and you look at our library, other library policies where we encourage people to get library cards who are not in our jurisdiction. So, I mean,
Charge them for it.
we charge them, but we encourage that,
Yeah.
you know.
So I don't have any issue with keeping that.
Yeah, and it's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to say. That's it's a long-winded. version. Okay. Speakers are requested to pre-register with the director in advance. This was in the original version too, or shortly before the meeting, I think we added. And the order of pre-registrations will determine the order of speakers. So that's new. Once pre-registered speakers have completed, the library board president will open the floor for other public speakers. So we didn't make a distinction there between people participating in person or remotely, which is a little tricky because really the people that are there remotely, the only way, you know, they could pre-register with me by sending me an email or something like that, but there's no form for them to fill out. So they would have had to contact me before the meeting. But
There's not a form for other people too. There's just a list for people.
there's just a list that's on the podium right now. But it's still going to open up to them after you know, if somebody did email me, and I've had that happen before, where somebody emailed and said, I'd like to make a public comment, and I would consider that to be the first person on the list because they got to me like 2 weeks ago or whatnot.
Yeah, I think if they're third on the list, they're third on the list, whether they're here in person or remote. You would just say is, you know, James Smith with us remotely, and if so, it's, you know, time to speak.
Okay. When a library board meeting is held in a hybrid, in-person and remote format, commenters may speak either in person or via tele or video conference.
Again, it's what we're already doing, but we're
Yes.
just trying to make it clear, communicate that that's an option.
I'm just thinking about the new policy for remote participation, and the state has some very clear definitions of what they mean by hybrid. Because what we're doing now technically is not a hybrid meeting. You know, a hybrid meeting is one in which it's not, you don't have a place where people are congregated. But I don't think it matters. I think I'm overthinking that too. I think this is fine.
Okay. But this is one where I didn't love the wordsmithing. So if anyone has better, more clear way to get this across, now's your chance. That one, and also just a hybrid in-person or remote, like you're saying. Okay, otherwise we'll move on.
Do we need to put the order comment in that?
Hold that thought for number 6.
Okay.
Or actually number 7, I should say.
Commenters may submit written statements to the library director in advance of a meeting to be read aloud during public comment, whether or not the commenter is present. And then here we had discussed adding something about if you anticipate reading an accommodation in advance, please let the library director know. Does it still seem like a reasonable place for that?
Do they have to expressly tell you that it's a comment for the board meeting? Because you've got lots, right? But you didn't read them all during the public comment. I mean,
That's a good point. Like somebody would have to tell me,
Yes.
please make sure the board, because if somebody just sends me something and says, make sure the board hears this, then I might just forward it an email.
otherwise, you're not obligated to read everything in a board meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So we should clarify. I mean, my intent here would to make that an option to request that but as you're saying, that would not be the default unless they ask. So how would we say,
Would you
Maybe.
also want a time limit on that? Like,
the
the comments have to be submitted.
hold that thought for number 7.
Well, these are
Maybe
written.
we should move number 7 up. a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
Commenters may submit written public comments. I mean, they're not just statements. It's called public comment. Statements meant to be read as public comment. I don't know.
I think the word request needs to be in here somewhere, that you need to
Request.
may request that their written statement
Be read as public comment.
We need to
may request in advance
differentiate these.
that a written statement submitted to the library director be read aloud. Let's try this. Yeah, that a written statement.
Do we have any other edits that we've made now that I need to make sure the board is aware of?
I don't think so.
Is that the first one?
A written statement submitted to the library director. And then I would just strike the advance of the meeting and then I would just strike all the way through 2. So the written statement submitted to the library director be read aloud.
Commenters may request in advance that a written statement submitted to the library director be read aloud.
Yeah.
During public comments, whether or not the commenter is present. Yeah, that's pretty good.
You said to wait until 7 for a time limit, but
Yeah.
I don't see how that would fit in there.
The comment length, it was intended to cover that.
I think I hear Martha's point, and that maybe number 7 should be bumped up a few in the order there. So it might come after number 4.
Well, I know, because the comment that I'm making here is that you say request in advance. The meeting starts at 5 o'clock. I request at 4:45.
Oh, yeah, that does happen too. Kathy?
But what she said about the amount of time, can individuals speaking are requested to state their name and jurisdiction of residency and limit their comments to 5 minutes or?
We covered that one
Number
in
2.
number 2 there, which wasn't on the screen when you came in, so it does say 5 minutes for their comments.
But maybe
You can only
number
talk.
7 needs to go right after that.
Mhm.
I hear, so Martha's other point is, do we need a day in advance or 2 hours in advance, or
Whatever fits with your schedule, sure that.
I'm the one who has to check my email, which I do obsessively, so.
Well, why would you limit in how early it has to come in for something submitted in writing rather than somebody who's able to come in, stop by in person, sign up right before the meeting?
It just puts the burden on the library director to check his email
2 minutes before.
2 minutes before the meeting in case he got something that's supposed to be read.
I feel like it's kind of okay, and if they do that, there should be some reasonable expectation that, hey,
Yeah,
but,
you might be working with AB 2 minutes before, not be able to.
right,
Maybe
but we
it's
could-
the library comments that are submitted during the meeting will not be read, or comments, something like that.
if during the meeting, you definitely wouldn't expect it to be. You could certainly put in a request at least an hour in advance. That's just a couple extra words.
I mean, even hours, no, like today, we've got a.
Yeah,
we've got
well,
a
you can put
meeting.
2 hours if you
Yeah.
want.
10
or however many.
days.
A day, 24 hours.
I mean, it's true if I'm reading that that now you've defined a transaction.
But if it doesn't happen, then you have a legitimate gripe. Yeah, we didn't
Yeah,
follow
so
that.
but be whatever's comfortable.
I mean, 24 hours is the safest way to do it, but that's not fair to the public.
Do you have to say in advance of the start of the meeting, or in advance of what?
Of a meeting start.
Okay. I would think, I'm trying to think of the amount of times this has happened in my 5 years doing this, and it's once somebody sent me something to be read into the record, and it was well in advance.
Yeah, I thought so too, yeah.
A day or two. So I could see though, like there's the library board is going to be talking about something. There's a story in the paper that morning, or there's some sort of email blast that goes out that morning, and somebody, is out of town and they want to make sure that their thoughts are heard. I'd like to try to accommodate that, but we have to be reasonable about what we can do. So maybe 2 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, because you're on the road, and like today, there's a policy meeting.
Think about like we go to Louisa, we got a board meeting in Louisa with a policy meeting first. Like if I don't get something before noon,
I would say 4 hours.
Just 4 hours.
But that gives you travel time, setup time. Plus, they get the agenda a week in advance, so if they know what's going to be on the agenda. Yes, I see what you're saying. Something could happen, and even though we meet on Mondays, there could be something that happens. And in advance
Is
of
this-
the board meeting. That's implied that that's the start of the board meeting, right?
you think we don't need of the board meeting?
That's kind of understood, I suppose.
Commenters may request at least 4 hours in advance that a written statement submitted to the library director be read aloud during public comment, whether or not the commenter is present. And can we strike the whether or not the commenter is present? Just say it's going to be read aloud.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because they could be here and they still want you to read it.
That point, but I don't think you need to say that. Commenters may request at least 4 hours in advance that a written statement submitted to the library director be read aloud during public comment. I think that during public comment captures that it's at a board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to try to shoehorn a sentence here saying,
Yeah.
if you anticipate,
If we want to read this today, then we got to do it then.
Yeah.
We don't have to read it today.
I think it belongs more like in 2, because this is about written statements. 2 is just in general about making a public comment.
How do you spell accommodation?
ODATILN. It'll correct you if it's wrong. There
Thank
go.
you.
So you corrected it.
Yeah, I knew she
You
would.
have to be able to stop.
Member of the public anticipates the need for any reasonable accommodation.
It doesn't go beep at you anymore, which is really nice. Although when it went beep at me, my spelling really improved.
I mean, you just use the same language. Maybe this is a new bullet. They may
Problem.
submit a request. I mean, even 4 hours, if
No, you
somebody
can't do
says.
4 hours.
Yeah, it's gotta be more than that.
Yeah, if
A
somebody
couple
says
days.
They need a
Sign language
translator
interpreter or
Yeah.
translator, we need.
Isn't there some wording that the ADA auditor guy had when we were talking about this for library programs? I can't remember what it was, but he definitely mentioned like a day or two in advance and suggested that we have somebody like on call for that. Do you remember that, what he said?
I do remember having that discussion. Camille and I were at Gordon Avenue talking with the city's ADA coordinator, and he was suggesting, yeah, just what you said, that basically the library would have somebody on standby, and that I can't remember what time frame he said though.
Yeah, I can't either. I feel like it was a day or two.
You
Yeah.
can probably arrange that a day or
But
because
not
those people are
guarantee
in demand and they
Yeah.
can't be scheduled that.
I think
And
Camille
our
was saying,
meetings are on Mondays, and if you're saying a day in advance, you're on the weekend.
Yeah,
You
say,
know, say business days in advance
a
or
business.
something along those lines.
I think Camille was also saying you'd have the relationship sort of in place.
Yeah.
On an all-call. Why don't we take a cycle to get this right, and
I think this would need to go to our attorney, basically.
yeah, I'm saying let's put off the first reading from today. It's not, there's no special time urgency, I don't think. So I would say put this at a new bullet, put an asterisk on it, and then you'll work it out with, you'll maybe take it to this contact that Camille was pointing out and get some suggested language.
Tony, is that okay that we won't have the reading?
Yeah,
I know
no,
you're gonna be devastated at a shorter meeting, right?
yeah, it's just horrible, but I'll get over it. I'll manage.
Okay, is this still the right place for this?
I think so.
I think
Okay, let me make a note.
so if we're talking about Martha, did I understand your question to be, is the words comment length clear that the written statement needs to be read within the 5-minute time period? Is that,
That needs to be clear.
and you feel that just comment length doesn't cover that?
Oh, I think it does.
Okay.
But if we have room, we might want to reiterate that because we've brought in several different aspects here.
So we talk about maximum 5 minutes in number 2, and then the order of registration in number 4. Maybe this just needs to be moved up right after those two. So it's like, here we set the time, here we set the order, here this says that the same guidelines will apply if you're in person or remote.
So the only thing you're losing then is you haven't talked about written statements yet, and 8 is intended to
Oh,
apply,
yeah, that's a good point.
apply also to the written statements.
I think it's okay. Maybe move it up 1 ahead of the new bullet. How's that?
All right, but if anyone feels a need for further clarification on comment length, now's the time to suggest that wording.
Can we put in on number 2, maximum of 5 minutes for their comments, written or to define it there? Can we put it in there?
You said it in 7, haven't you?
So I think that would be okay. Speakers will have a maximum of 5 minutes for their comments. you know, regardless of,
Regardless of format.
yeah, regardless of format, so whether in person, or submitted in writing or
Or-
electronically, whatever.
Yeah,
I think get rid of that one.
Yeah. Regardless of format.
Or just regardless of format, do you think?
Do FMT to keep it from it going over.
You wanted to strike through to underline number 7, right?
Details.
Well, if we get rid of 7, you've lost the ordering part, though. Maybe,
Yeah, we
maybe
lose
that's
the
not
ordering.
crucial. Maybe it's not crucial.
Well, speakers are requested to pre-register with the library director in advance, blah, blah, blah. However, once pre-registered speakers have completed, the library board president, I mean, I think it's
Pretty, yeah.
there.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. That's fine.
Okay, good work.
All right.
So this is the one that needs. Okay. Number 9, members of the public audience should refrain from applause and other forms of approval or disapproval as a courtesy to each speaker. Signs are permitted in the meeting room so long as they are not attached to any stick or pole and do not obstruct the view of persons attending the meeting. Period.
should or shall.
Ooh. I don't know, Kathy, do you know? Should refrain or shall refrain?
Shall.
Shall, all right.
To me, it's more of a semantic question of how strong do we want to make that. Should is
It's
just,
more of a suggestion.
yeah, should is a request, yeah.
Shall is an order and should is a suggestion.
So what is the feeling?
Shall.
Shall. Some of our jurisdictional partners go into a lot more detail here about like what you can and can't, you know, don't clap, don't whistle, don't snap. You can do this, you can do the hokey pokey, but you can't do that, you know. I think this is broad enough.
With other forms of approval or disapproval, and it covers
Covers
the
it all.
gamut.
Yeah, and we're gonna kind of get into, when we get to the bottom here, it'll be the president's role to manage these things, and it does our wording, make sure that he's within his bound, or they are within their bounds to do that. Okay, number 10. So number 10 is a direct reflection of the statement in the current policy that says, comments on the performance of specific library employees should be addressed to the library director. Comments about the performance of specific employees will be addressed by the Board of Trustees in closed meetings when requested by the library director. So both Mike and I felt that there just needed to be some explanation for that, for the public, basically. So number 10 now reads, the suggested wording is the library board does not directly supervise any library employees except for the library director, who is responsible for the management of library staff. The best mechanism to provide feedback on the performance of specific library employees is to contact the library director. Comments about the performance of specific employees will be addressed by the Board of Trustees in closed meetings when requested by the library director.
What if they have a comment about the library director?
I think that's fair game. You know, I can see, right, that, you know, people are unhappy about a direction that the library is taking. Like that's who they want to come to the library board and say, we don't like, you know, these things that the library is doing that are David Plunkett's fault or his successor.
But this also, just to be clear for everyone, doesn't say you can't show up and talk about employee X. It just kind of tells you this is the right way to do it, but
It doesn't specifically say you
it
can't.
doesn't say as soon as you say someone's name, we're yanking your microphone.
Yeah, and I have mixed emotions
Is that something that we need to check with an attorney
about whether or not
whether or not people
Could.
can, in public comment, talk about it?
they can talk about whatever they want. It's whether or not we can then shut it down. I think is the question.
And sometimes they might not be talking about the employee by name, but they might be talking about the collection management developer, the librarian, and we know that's one person. Or the branch manager at Gordon Avenue, or the,
But if somebody wants to come in and say, you all are not, you're not getting the books I want you to get, you're doing a poor job in that, that's not a critique of an individual, even though we might know that it's one person doing that work. They're complaining about service.
I guess the distinction is you wouldn't comment on it, but you're not saying that people can't say it in
Well,
public.
the board wouldn't comment, period, yeah,
That's right.
about it.
I would also say, in my experience, and David and regulars let me know, I don't think this has come up in the public comment section.
I've never seen it in my
Other
previous.
than the director, there was one where the director got raked over the coals.
It was one.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, there was, well,
Yeah.
When the child was, the little kid
Yeah.
was,
Even then, I don't think they said person X by name,
they
and
didn't say him by name, but they gave enough.
Figure it out.
so that would be an example. Would we want? I think we do want that feedback to be allowable. That happened in that situation, and we would. The flip side would be, well, no, that's not okay to tell us in this meeting format, in the public format, because you're starting to talk about something that happened with a specific employee.
Well, we don't discuss it, we put it and then do closed session.
but the public has brought comments in the past that directly reflect on a particular library employee.
I think that this, I don't know what the gist, where this came from, but it a little bit mirrors like FOIA law, basically. So the member of the public could ask me for basically any record that the library produces, my email, your email, anything you produce, basically. Anything, yeah, these notes right here that I can't read myself, but good luck. But very specifically, personnel matters are exempt from that. If somebody were to come and say, I want to read, I think one of your employees did me wrong and I want to see all their personnel evaluations, like that we would say no to, because that's exempt by law. And also, we would just say no to it. So I think that's maybe where the thinking was here, I'm struggling with this one myself, where I don't want to put library staff up to be hung out to dry in front of, if something happened that they were directly involved with. I would say, well, let's get a closed session, we would need to discuss this. But I don't know where the line is there.
This is a personnel matter, we will follow up with you
I
later.
mean, that's what the policy currently says. But that's not what number 10 here says.
But again, Kathy, we'll follow up with you later, yes. But are you allowed in this forum to submit the feedback or the concern in the public meeting? You're saying that you're skeptical.
In my experience, you take the public comment, you give it to David. If we need to discuss it, we discuss it, but we don't come back and stand before them and say, Kathy Harris was the one who threw the book at the little child.
You would allow them to say it?
You would allow, yeah.
Yeah, you'd allow them to say it.
Right, that's the question we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed that after the fact, we don't interact, and that, as David pointed out, is covered later. Okay, so you are saying we allow them to say it.
Because we also had that during the time when the people were coming in about the name change. They were calling not staff, but they were calling people out in the audience.
Yeah, people were, crosstalk basically to each other, Camille or Tony, any thoughts on this one?
Nothing really. I mean, I think that, it's hard to know in advance what people are going to say if we're not going to vet the comments. So I don't think personnel matters of any kind should be in anything other than a private session, but I can understand the whole FOIA aspect of this as well. So.
Yeah, I don't think number 10 actually precludes anyone from making that comment.
Right.
It's really just directing them to, like, this is how it works. And we're not going to talk in public forum about these issues as
Right.
library board, right?
This one seems a more should than a shall to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The best mechanism to provide feedback, so forth. So I'm on the fence. I think it needs to be in here, but I'm not sure how we'd reword it other than what's there now.
Let the attorney look at it.
Sure, I'll run this. I'll run the whole policy by the attorney. So, but I think as it's written, I think it depends on whether or not the board is going to fall on the yes, we're going to allow people to talk about personnel, or no, we're not public to talk about personnel. If the answer is yes, but we're not going to respond, then I think it's fine as is. If the answer is no, we're gonna go back to what our current one says, which is comments on the performance of specific library employees should be addressed to the library director. They will be addressed in the closed meetings. So there's a should in the current
Yeah,
policy.
the current one doesn't
say no. I didn't realize that, Jay.
You could find yourself in the position of having said that you would read all written comments submitted to you, of having to actually read something about it, which is really even weirder.
Yeah, it's a very meta world we live in.
I think I kind of land on, if you said we wanted to prevent that, how do you enforce it? Because you're
Right, I guess that was my next question. Tony, as president, if somebody showed up today and they wanted to make a comment about Ginny, the current policy says that, the chairperson is responsible for the orderly conduct. Comments on the performance of library employees should be addressed to the library director. How would we handle that, in half an hour?
Yeah, I know. Good question. I mean, I would probably just shout them down. And then if things had calmed down, I would point to the policy to say that, matters relating to personnel are be discussed in private session.
I'd also throw in, this is the point where we throw in, technically, this would also apply to complimentary statements made about a specific employee.
Right. Okay, well, so it seems like we're going to review this again in 2 months.
Okay.
So let's move on from that
But
one.
just to restate the consensus, it sounds like they're allowable or not. There's just kind of some on the fence is in the room. People are kind of seeing it both ways.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think the review is an important aspect of it.
Yeah, the funny thing about public comment, as far as I can tell, there's no requirement to have a public comment session. It's understandable.
Really?
Yeah, like you have to have your meetings in public and decisions need to be made in public. Don't quote me on that. Clearly, we're not going to say we don't want public comment. But
Just from my HOA days, I think there is HOA law requiring it, so I would just kind of assume that would be the case for us.
well, it's not going to impact what we're doing here because we're never going to not have.
So
the
just to be clear, I think my specific question for the attorney would be, if we wanted to this speech on this topic, a content-based speech on an employment topic, could we even do that legally?
Yeah.
That would be the first question, and then go from there.
And I guess, right, so I guess that's why I brought it up. I mean, I think at
And
any point,
wouldn't we want to have some way of, if we were making a comment, if we were trying to encourage the person to stop, give them a guidance on how they proceed from here? You need to contact the library director.
Yeah.
You can contact them through the email, you can contact them.
Well, so that was part of the goal of 10, was to try and put some of that in place, to do some of that communication proactively. Okay.
let me make that comment though. Do we need to explain how to? All right, number 11, the board will not respond to speakers during public comment. However, the board may direct staff to follow up with information to provide further research to the board or to place an issue presented on a future board agenda. So the current reading for that says,
Board members
Board
will not
members, yeah.
respond.
Board members will not question nor respond to speakers. So this just says the same thing, basically. The board is not gonna, as Kathy was saying, directly respond to the public. However, they can turn to me and say, find out what the story is with that, or report back on that issue that this person is having. Or we'd like to discuss this at our next board meeting.
Which was already implied, but this gives a little more communication about, hey, we're not going to ignore it. But we're just not going to have a back and forth during this meeting about whatever you said.
Okay, Tony, you ready?
I'm ready.
The library board president is responsible for monitoring time and ensuring the orderly conduct of the meeting, and may take steps to maintain order if the speaker or crowd becomes unruly, derogatory, or personally abusive towards specific individuals, or in general disruptive of the conduct of the board's business.
Library board president may pull fire alarm when needed.
May turn his computer off.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think I think we've been basically doing this anyway since we've had the upsurge in public comments. Anybody else feel that we need to add anything else here? Does this need to be stronger? Is this too strong?
The current wording is the chairperson, which is not a position at JMRL,
Yeah.
is responsible for the orderly conduct of the meeting and shall rule on the appropriateness of speakers' presentations in light of the purpose of public comment periods.
Yeah,
So it's very vague.
I like this a lot better.
There's a lot that's not defined in that current.
Right. And also that the previous one sounds like I'm going to be listening and go, wait a minute, that's malarkey. We can't do that, type of thing, which I'm obviously not going to do. So, I think this is good, and I think we've been de facto doing this anyway. So, I'm good with this if everyone else is.
I like it too. And this also gets into, derogatory or personally abusive towards specific individuals may provide some protection for employees that we're not having there. So if somebody were to come in and say, something about an employee that we're allowing, and then start to say, and also I don't like the look of them and this and that, and it would kind of veer into this category maybe.
Yeah.
If it was the library thing, like, the books are never, they're always backwards or upside down or whatever, then. Okay. So I think it's on me to go get some review from outside sources, including our legal counsel, about number 8, the reasonable accommodation, and then the questions that we had about comments about specific employees. And then presumably Mike will be able to just tidy that up and read this at our next policy committee.
Yeah, I don't know if we need a blue line next
won't.
time it goes
We
to the
won't, yeah.
board, because we're not going to read it today.
It'll be all new red lines. Yeah.
Unless, okay. Well, so we'll mention it in today's report. The plan. Okay. As far as today's agenda, we have a scant 15 minutes left.
3 minutes really. But
Right, if we want to not go straight up, if we want to. So I think I'd like to see if we can do 2.1, the public employees code of ethics. And it's pretty clear to me that I think 2.11 is one discussion. Pop up in 2.1. The idea is that if you scroll down to when was this revised, so in 2010, it was theoretically adapted from City Charlottesville personnel policies, which are new. So in other words, today these things are covered. There's as we saw from David's email, there's recently been a new publication of City of Charlottesville personnel policies. So the proposal on the table would be, if these things are all covered in those policies, we could deprecate our own adapted version and just in the employee handbook call out these key portions of the City of Charlottesville manual and just link directly over there. Did I make that clear what the proposal would be? So the question is, do we need a separate policy, or can we just kind of fall back on City of Charlottesville? Well, City of Charlottesville via the handbook.
Yeah.
There's some there's some different stuff in JMRL's ethical guidelines, like patron confidentiality, that are not, right, specifically covered in the Public Employees Code.
I think we have a separate confidentiality policy. I forget what it's called. You see something here in the Public Employees Code of Ethics? Which one are you looking at? The ALA one?
Looking at JMRLs, and I
Are you
just,
looking at, where are you looking at?
the first page, I see something that
What number is it?
it's the first, after the statement of ethics, it's the second bullet point. The statement of ethics is the first bullet point.
Oh, you're looking at this right here, what's on the screen right now? Okay, so this is a proposed edit to our handbook.
So we're comparing the city of Charlottesville's Public Employee Code of Ethics with this first statement of ethics section.
Yeah, basically. So the idea would be, you know, do we still need the board level thing, or can we just say, we're using the city's personnel policies and library staff, here's what you should know about that. And those edits actually are not a board level decision. These would come from staff, but we would want the board to endorse them as they did.
I'd have to compare them one by one. I didn't.
So I did look at both of them,
Yeah.
and there's nothing that I could see that conflicts between the two as far as our current Public Employees Code of Ethics and the city's new Code of Ethics. And there's a lot more detail in the city's Code of Ethics than we had. So it makes sense to me to refer to that for people to look at for extremely detailed information, and then to do the sort of summarizing that we did for other things in the handbook, the way that we did it for other things, to make them more readable or digestible.
And what she said is a good thing, because legally it's been looked at.
Yeah, there certainly has been vetted by the city attorney, yeah. So the things that I pulled out from kind of the work that Camille did, comparing what was in our current Public Employees Code of Ethics to what's in the new city's personnel policies, we're just laying out some, here's the basic tenets, you know, be honest and transparent, don't be out for personal gain, treat everyone fairly, build the community through good stewardship. So those are kind of high level, you know, these are the types of ethics that we believe in. And in order to do that, stay away from conduct that reflects poorly on JMRL, either at work or in non-library matters. Don't represent JMRL in a way that's a discredit to the library. Don't conduct yourself in unlawful or acrimonious, disrespectful or unprofessional manner at any time. Avoid conduct that might undermine the public trust by making objective, fair, and impartial decisions. And then it gets into more specifics, the improper use of official positions. This comes up every year at this time when nice patrons bring cookies in for the library staff, and the staff wants to know, can I eat these cookies? Or is that providing an impartial, an improper use of my official position? The answer is yes, you can eat the cookies. And then a little bit about, like, if you see a breach of these ethics, what to do about that, including up to, if it's the library director, you should report those to the library board president.
And that was, oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
And that last piece was something that was not in our current Public Employee Code of Ethics policy, but is in the city's policy and seems important to me to point out in our explanation.
So aside from the specific ethical concepts here, there is sort of a conceptual thought that occurs to me. If we deprecate this, so currently we're communicating to the public, here's what you can expect from that our employees will adhere to. If we take that away, we're not communicating that to the public because it's part of the handbook, which is public record, but it's not something that we publish and show our work on kind of up front. So is that an important goal to anyone here, that we, through the policy manual, communicate to the public, here's what you can expect as far as behavior of employees?
I mean, we have been doing that for decades.
Right.
And it wouldn't be hard to kind of take what the work here for the handbook and turn that into a more policy level.
Yeah.
There was one other change, or was it? Oh, Camille pointed out that all of the statements about what the state laws were about conflict of interest have changed. So there's a new line just saying, here's a link to the state's laws. Jenny?
You're not talking about, we'll always refer to, JMRL staff will be bound to the Seville policy of code of ethics. You're not talking about getting rid of that. Because this to me has much more specific wording than what we've got in the employee handbook here. Like employees will not have any material financial interest in any private business or professional activity. I mean, that's like really important, and it's not so clearly said in the employee handbook, but
Well, this is a draft too, like we could add stuff. We could
But
make
I
that
presume
what-
that's in the underlying personnel policy.
Yeah.
But again, is it important for the public to know upfront, hey, we're actively telling you that you can expect our employees won't have the
And I think
material financial.
to Jenny's point is if we deprecate this, then we also need to be very clear in our own handbook, that same expectation.
Sure, sure.
For our own staff, so
Yeah.
that they know where to look and the public knows where to look. It sounds like you're convincing yourself that we should keep a policy here.
I can go either way.
Policy would say, we follow the cities, here's some key points you need to know.
Yeah, yes, I guess that's how it would be the right approach.
Okay.
If you thought it was important to the public.
What do the other board members think?
Well, that's it.
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because what the city has done, it's been approved, it's been looked at. And are we gonna pull out enough to make a person who's reading it understand that it's married to the city? You understand what, so, because I can say, oh, but they didn't say that. So I think legally, we should keep with the city.
And this is something that could be linked. So if somebody was questioning, there'd be very easy access to that. And again, show how the two bodies interact.
I think Kathy makes a really good point. Could be that the policy just says JMRL employees are bound by or agree, or abide by the city of Charlottesville's personnel policies on ethics, on matters of ethics and things like that.
And
Just like
here's a
one
link to
sentence.
it.
yeah, this is so well done, really. This is.
These are gone. They're gone from the city too.
So this isn't,
They don't, that is based on an employee handbook that they had in the early aughts that no longer exists.
Wait, which one are you talking about, Jenny? Are you looking at the new
I'm looking
city
at-
policy?
well, it says JMRL policy 2.1. I would miss last month's meeting. I'm sorry, I may not.
That's okay.
She's looking at the current policy.
Oh, okay, okay.
But there's a whole new city personnel
Oh,
manual.
okay.
Yeah.
So none
Right.
of this,
Okay.
And that is in there. It used to be, that was taken from a city employee handbook that had a bulleted list that the board at that time said, that looks good. Let's adapt that a little bit to our own needs, like add JMRL instead of the city and agree to it. But that doesn't exist anymore.
I like this policy because it's crystal clear.
You like it as is. So just take away, so Jenny's vote would be just take away the line that says adapted from the city of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Just say this is our policy.
That there is so much more information and detail in the city policy that's
Yeah.
not addressed there that it would make me very nervous to just say this is it.
And to Kathy's point, we are bound by those.
Yeah, and I think what if we could just have one bullet point and link to or refer to the city policy in our other ethics policy that we were going to talk about, the library ethics one? Like, could we just refer to,
It's true, David, if we
We adapted. the
If
other
we
one.
adapt the other one, we can just put it, and we're saying we're just falling back to Charlottesville for public employees, we just put it
that'd
in.
be like the first bullet point. We follow the public employee code as outlined in the city's personnel manual, blah, 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 and then start on the library stuff.
And there'd be a link.
I'm not,
I'm happy with that.
I'm not positive that that's a public facing link. It is, we have a copy internally that is in our intranet, but it's a foilable document, so it's out there. I just don't know that they have posted it on a website. So, but that we could make happen though, I'm sure, because they had a big discussion about it when they adopted it. So add The suggestion is maybe to add a bullet in the other policy explaining JMRL uses city personnel policies and have a link.
For the code, public employee code.
So that would mean adapting the other one.
Yeah, well, we'll see where we land on that.
Okay.
But that's sort of a working. Okay, I'm happy with. I'm happy with that working plan, and we can see what that looks like. I mean,
Okay.
I think that does accomplish at least a bare minimum goal of telling the public about
Where to go find it.
that these other requirements exist. It still doesn't state the expectation right up front, but
Kathy, I think convinced me though that, if we are using those, then either publish them all.
Yeah.
Or make sure people can get directly to where they are.
Ginny, I do think from Camille's research, all of the current bullets are essentially covered in some form in the new manual.
It's
So
not as clear.
Yeah.
yeah, it's not as
Concise,
consolidated.
yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we can wrap for today then. If there's no other.
And I'll make a note here that there's only two we do policy reviews on the calendar year for some reason. So the only two that are up in 2023 are partnerships and signage. So we've got some leftover work from this year with these codes of ethics. We also, the equipment fund was on hold, and then the reorg. Yeah, just to throw that out there.
So that's a little bit of a roadmap for next year. So, but this also potentially gives us space if there are other hot topics that we'd like to take a look at as sort of something new. We might have to think about. So thinking about those, let us know about those ideas. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
See you in 5